Hey guys, it's me back on YouTube. Aren't you so excited? I'm so excited. I noticed that one of you stopped subscribing to me, so whoever that is, you fail. I'm just kidding. Um, you're not gonna fail. I love you anyway, because I'm me, and you're you, and I love you. Okay. Today, my friends, we are going to be talking about how to do really good research for your real fiction story. You guys are so excited about your context, and you've got a timeline now for your story, which means that you know what is going to take place in the intro. You know how you're going to build up the tension with your rising action by starting with the event, like the big thing that's going to take place, and building it up and making it even more dramatic, intense for your reader, and then you know what is going to be the climax. So, like the do or die moment, the moment that you're going to really stretch out and torture your reader while they're wondering what on earth is going to happen. Um, and then there's some things that are going to happen after that kind of let us know how your character's feelings resolve. And then we're going to have the resolution where we know whether it's a happy or a sad ending. In my case, it's sad. Everyone dies. But because you guys want me to write about a volcano that killed everyone, that's why. So, but today we're going to start the process over the next couple of days of becoming an expert about our context. We can't just make these details up, and we know why. We can't make them up because we want to honor the context that we're working in. If you are writing about a mental illness or a physical illness, we have to make sure that we're being really respectful of people that are actually suffering or families that are suffering from this mental illness or physical illness or have people that are dealing with it. We have to make sure if we're writing about a real event like a battle in a war or something like religious persecution or a weather event like a hurricane or a storm or a natural disaster, that we are saying to our readers, we care about this event and we're interested in it. And that's why we're writing about it, not because we think it's like an adventure movie and we don't really care about it. So that is what we're going to be starting to do today, is researching for our story. So you can see what Miss Sticky is saying. The key to a fantastic and believable, not to mention successful, story is for sure planning. So we have a plan. We have our story timelines, which you started, and some of you finished them today in class at the beginning. But we have those, which is great. The plan is great. But even if you have a plan, you could also totally screw it up by not becoming an expert, and then your story will not be real and believable, and your reader won't believe it. They won't be respecting you as an author and the craft moves that you made because they won't be sucked into the world of the story. So we have to become authentic experts on the context that we've chosen. And how do we do that? Well, we research. And over the next 2 days, we're going to be writing down lists of questions that we need to start with. And then you're going to be going on an internet research journey. And we are going to be keeping a doc of all the stuff we're learning and cutting and pasting in lots of stuff that we're learning and learning how to become better internet researchers in general, so that we can find the info we need and not a bunch of stuff we don't need. So, where should we start? Well, I can't tell you how to research everything because a lot of research is experimentation. It's looking up something, finding something else, and allowing yourself to go down some rabbit holes, and then maybe realizing that you're not getting what you need and starting over again. So, here are some great places to start, and these are things you will actually need to look up. So, first thing is something we actually experimented with last week. It's figuring out what kind of names do your characters need in your story. They have to be authentic to the time period you've chosen. So I'm throwing a big word at you here. So here you see authentic names. Authentic means real. And here's another big word. You can't be anachronistic. So what does that crazy word mean? I don't expect you to know, although some of you might know. So let's break this word down. Anachronistic. Anachronistic. The beginning of that word, the prefix ana, has a similar prefix to anti. You know what anti means? It means against. So ana, anti, similar prefix, it means against. chron, that has the same prefix as chrono or chronological, and that means time. So anachron, that means against time. You can't be against time. It's the same reason I'm not going to name my ancient Roman character like Kaylee, because that's not a name from that time period. It's a new name. That's a modern name. So you have to research what names existed or were popular during this time period and choose from what you find. You have to name all your characters that exist in a time period according to the time period. We did that already, which is great. If you didn't do that yet, you have to. So if you are researching something like a battle, like the battle at, I know Daniel's doing the Battle of Okinawa. If you're doing the Battle of Okinawa, you cannot just make it up. You have to know what happened. So you need to look up timeline of actual events from the Battle of Okinawa. If you are doing 9/11, a lot of you are, you need to look up timeline of actual events on September 11th, 2001 in Manhattan. You need to look up which tower was hit first and which towers fell first. You cannot just assume, because the reality is also know why. I think that's to know when it hit, you need each dates. That's why I said what happened exactly. Okay. So the next thing you need to know, this is like important for my story, is you have setting details. You need to know the geography. So if I'm going to set my story in Pompeii in the market, I need to know some details about that. So I'm going to have to look up village of Pompeii, city of Pompeii. If you are doing 9/11, you need to know the streets of Lower Manhattan. You need to know the location of the World Trade Center. If you are doing the tsunami in Southeast Asia, you need to know the beaches where it hit. If you are doing Pearl Harbor, you need to know where that's located and where the ships were. If you are doing something that takes place in a different state, if you're doing like LGBTQ plus rights in another state, you need to know the states and the cities where these things were problems, where they happen. What are the street names? What are the downtowns, the city centers, etc. Okay, so that is really, really, really important. What was the place like when your story took place? Setting details, by the way, guys, also goes for things like items. Like someone the other day was like, had a story taking place in the 1990s, and they were like, I'm going to have my character text their parents. And I said, you can't. And they said, why? And I said, because there was no text messaging in the 1990s. So before you have your character use an item or like get in a certain kind of car or turn on a television or pull out some kind of weapon or whatever, or put on even a kind of coat or sneaker, you need to make sure it existed, because otherwise you're going to look silly. And silly details that are anachronistic, they're going to pull your reader right out of your story. And your stories are going to be amazing. You don't want your reader being like, wait, I don't think that was a thing. So think about stuff like that for transportation, for things like toys or books or vehicles or technology, all that stuff. Okay. Just keep in mind, texting really came popular in about 2006. iPhones started existing around 2007. Most people didn't have them until about 2010. Social media around 2008. Internet around 2000. All right. Just keep those things in mind. Okay. Authentic tone. What words existed? People weren't running around Mount Vesuvius's eruption in Pompeii going cool or bro. They didn't talk like that. Even in 2001, September 11th, they didn't talk like that. So if you're writing about soldiers in a war, what words did they use? They probably talked differently to their soldier buddies than they did to like their moms and their girlfriends and their boyfriends and their wives. So just make sure you know what words and slang and formal tone existed and what was important for dialogue. How did different people talk to each other? If you have a scene where your character's talking to his teacher and then talking to his friends, he's probably going to talk a little differently. Make sure you know what was proper and what was not proper. And finally, authentic relationships. How did people treat each other? If you have a military story, you bet your butt that if you have a soldier, he's going to talk differently to his captain or his major or his probably wouldn't talk to the general, but or his troop commander, then he's going to talk to just another soldier that's a private just like him. Someone is going to speak differently to a police officer than they're going to speak to their coworker. In my story, for example, my main character, Claudia, she's going to speak differently to Albus and Cassia, the old people that pull her into their house, than she's going to speak to her little brother. So make sure you know those things. So now that we have a pretty good list of stuff that we know we have to look for, here are some ways to form questions that are going to be helpful to you. Okay. So stuff like, oops, get out of here. Okay. What were some common names in ancient Rome. Okay, that's one. Common names in ancient Rome. How did kids address their parents in ancient Rome? You could say how, uh, what was the village of Pompeii like before Mount Vesuvius erupted? Okay. You could also ask questions like, did they have, this is for other people doing like 9/11, cell phones during 9/11? What streets was the World Trade Center on? Ah, okay. How did a soldier speak to his commander in Vietnam? Thinking about you, Geo. Or World War II. Okay. You could say something like, where did the 2004 tsunami hit? Okay. Now, something you can do also is if you feel like you're going to get really confusing results, you can ask it, you can put in article for kids after everything. Okay. After everything. And then it will give you easier results, like things like Time for Kids or things like magazines for that are more based on nonfiction. That's for kids. That can be really helpful. Okay, or you can write article for students. Okay, that would be helpful. So something like this: article for kids, article for students. All right. So what you're going to do now is what I want you to do is open a doc. I prefer Office 365 just because it's easier to email to me. And I want you to write 5 questions to start with. The more specific, the better. If you type in September 11th, what's going to happen? Well, if you type in September 11th, let's see what happens. Okay? You're going to get a ton of stuff. Consequences, people still missing, how long did it take to clean up? FAQs as events unfold 10 years later. That's not helpful to me because it doesn't have to do with my story. What I need to know is timeline of September 11th, 2001. Timeline. Here we go. Okay. Timeline. Great. Here we go. Both towers. Terrifying. This. Here's a map. All right, timeline. And here's the timeline. That's what I need. That's what's helpful. So once you have this information, here's what you can do. Okay? You can click on it and you can do this. All right? This is a lot, right? So I can go ahead and just cut and paste the whole thing. All right? This is, I don't need this because this seems to be after everything collapsed. Yep. So I'm going to go ahead and, oh, hang on. Yep, that's the first tower collapsing. Yeah, that sucked. Yep, here we go. 1028. North Tower collapses. That was the second one. I know that because I saw the live show. I was there. Not in the building, but I was there. I'll tell you that sometime. All right, here we go. And then here we go. I have this information here. It's an awful lot, and I don't need all of it, but I can go through it later, right? And then I can move on to my next question. So make sure that you're cutting and pasting, all right? You can highlight, and then you copy, and then you paste. And then you'll have a big doc full of all the stuff that you need, okay? Now, sometimes when you go into something, and you hit the back button, you'll find out that like, oh, this one's really interesting too. You might want more than one article, and that's okay as well. Or you might find out, oh, look at this map. This is really cool. So I am going to take this map and I'm going to copy the image and I'm just going to go ahead and put it right in my doc because this is actually easier. So for me to read, and you can put the whole thing in. All right. So over the next 2 days, this is what we're going to do. So I'm going to ask you to go ahead and title your doc something great, like real fiction research, not something like Doc 85721 or not something like pee pee poo poo. You know how much I love when you call your doctor that. All right. Anyway, so that's how you're going to start your research. Now you get why it's important. You can go ahead and resubscribe to me. One person that unsubscribed to me, just so you know, I'm like deeply mortally offended. Okay. Oh, and this is for you, Francina.